Hello, Connecticut special education leaders, educators, professionals, and families. I hope this finds you and your loved ones well. My name is Alicia Tracus. I am an education consultant for the Bureau of Special Education in the Connecticut State Department of Education. Thank you for attending our session this afternoon, Secondary Transition Discussion with Connecticut State Agencies. Just a few attendee reminders. All attendees will be placed on mute for the duration of the webinar. For audio, you must connect to your computer's audio or telephone using the phone number provided in the registration from SDE GoToWebinar. This session is being recorded and will be posted on the Connecticut State Department of Education Performance Matters Forum webinar series page. Closed captioning is also available for this webinar. Please see the chat box for the website. During our session, we encourage you to be engaged using the GoToWebinar in-series features. To ask a question, please use the raise hand feature. When called upon, please unmute yourself to speak. If there's a question that needs to be answered during the panelists' overview of their agency, if it's a clarifying question, we'll encourage you to use that raise hand feature. If it's a question that can wait until the end during the Q&A session, we would encourage you to wait until that time. You can also ask a question using the question box. Questions will be addressed during the session or during that Q&A time at the end of the session. You can find a copy of the presentation using the download handouts feature. And finally, before we begin, we're going to ask you to answer a poll so we know who is joining us on our session this afternoon. So please, who is joining us today? Please select the answer that best describes your role: an administrator, special education teacher or transition coordinator, related services staff or school counselor, an other school district staff member, or other. All right, it looks like not much is moving, so I'm thinking that we have the majority of the results in. So we have about 47% on the call are special education teachers or transition coordinators. About 27% are administrators. 11% are other school or district staff members. We have 8% as other, and about 6% as related services staff or school counselors. Great, well, welcome, we're happy to have you here. Next slide, Michelle, please.
Did you want to talk about the presenters? That's the slide that I have up.
Okay, that's not what I'm seeing, so good to know. All right. Our session presenters. So I'm honored to be here with some of my Connecticut State Agency partners. They include Ruth Cavarlo, Level Up Supervisor, excuse me, from the Bureau of Rehab Services. Jill Larmet, Disability Resource Coordinator at Capital Workforce Partners, Karen Quiznow, Operations Coordinator and Retained Project Lead at the Connecticut Department of Labor, Cynthia Randolph, Behavioral Health Clinical Manager from the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services in the Young Adult Services Division, Barry Rita, Transition Coordinator at the Bureau of Education and Services for the Blind, and Brian K. Smith, Assistant Regional Director in the West Region from the Department of Developmental Services. A special thanks also to my internal colleague from the Connecticut State Department of Education, Michelle Rosado, who is assisting us in facilitating this session as well as monitoring the chat and questions with us. So thank you, everyone. During our session today, I will be providing a review of federal and state secondary transition requirements, a review of current statewide data, specifically regarding Indicator 13, secondary transition, and Indicator 14, post-school outcomes, a review of secondary transition tools, resources, and professional learning opportunities. Then each of my agency partners will provide an overview of their Connecticut State Agency services and resources available, and then we'll offer a question and answer session at the end. On this slide, you will find some of the federal and state laws and regulations related to secondary transition, all of which are hyperlinked directly to that requirement. Today, I will be specifically speaking about changes in secondary transition requirements as a result of Public Act 1949, which was effective July 1st of 2019, and a recent court decision, AR versus the Connecticut State Board of Education, related to IDEA eligibility. All of these laws and regulations can also be found on the Connecticut State Department of Education's Secondary Transition webpage under the Laws and Regulations tab. Next slide, please. I always like to start with the purposes of the IDEA, which is also one of the missions of the Bureau of Special Education. So one of the purposes of the IDEA is to ensure that all children with disabilities have available to them a free, appropriate public education, or FAPE, that emphasizes special education and related services designed to meet their unique needs and prepare them for further education, employment, and independent living. Next slide, please. Beginning not later than the first Individualized Education Program, or IEP, to be in effect when the student turns 14 with a diagnosis of autism, and beginning not later than the first IEP to be in effect when the student turns 16 or younger if determined appropriate by the Planning and Placement Team, or PPT, and updated annually thereafter. The IEP must include appropriate, measurable post-secondary goals based upon age-appropriate transition assessments related to training or education, employment, and where appropriate, independent living skills. The IEP also must include transition services, which includes courses of study needed to assist the student in reaching those goals. So again, as a result of Public Act 1949, it's the first IEP to be in effect when the student turns age 14 with a diagnosis of autism, and for all other disability categories, it is beginning not later than the first IEP to be in effect when the student turns age 16. Related to transition services and PPT membership, if the purpose of the PPT is the consideration of post-secondary goals for the student or the transition services needed to assist the student in reaching those goals, the school district must invite the student with a disability If the student is not able to attend or does not attend, the PPT must ensure that the student's preferences and interests are considered during the meeting. Additionally, to the extent appropriate, with the consent of the parent or the student who has reached the age of majority, the school district must invite a representative of any participating agency that is likely to be responsible for providing or paying for transition services. Regarding transition goals, every student must have a minimum of 2 post-school outcome goal statements, which we refer to in Connecticut as PSOGs, 1 PSOGs related to post-secondary education or training, and 1 PSOGs related to employment, and where appropriate, 1 PSOGs related to independent living skills, which also incorporates community participation. For each of those PSOGs, there must be a minimum of 1 separate corresponding annual IEP goal with related short-term objectives related to transition services needs. As a reminder, only 1 transition box or transition area can be checked at the top of the page on page 7 for each annual IEP goal. That means either post-secondary education or training, or employment or independent living skills. On June 10th, the United States District Court for the District of Connecticut published the AR versus the Connecticut State Board of Education summary judgment. On July 10th, the judge for the United States District Court, District of Connecticut, filed the permanent injunction, judgment, and order, and denied the state's application to stay the injunction during the pendency of the appeal. The judgment displaces the state law in practice to exit students at the end of the school year in which the student turns 21 years of age. This decision supersedes prior guidance issued by the Connecticut State Department of Education related to that practice. As a result of this court decision, all students who have not yet turned 22 years old and who have not received a regular high school diploma, which includes students who were exited on or before June 30th of 2020 due to reaching the maximum age of eligibility in accordance with the then effective state law, remain eligible for special education services under the IDEA up until their 22nd birthday, or until they graduate from high school with a regular high school diploma, whichever occurs first. Just a note that a certificate of completion or certificate of attendance is not a regular high school diploma. Students whose eligibility terminated when they graduated with a regular high school diploma are not subject to an extension of eligibility until they turn 22, nor are they entitled to compensatory education. On August 22nd, the Second Circuit Court of Appeals did also deny the state's request for a stay of this judgment. So therefore, the CSDE and the plaintiffs will be moving forward with notification and implementation of compensatory services when appropriate under the district court decision. Further information will be provided as it becomes available. As always, please consult with your local board counsel if you have specific questions about the effect of this decision on your provision of special education to students. There are resources and guidance related to this decision, which are also hyperlinked on this slide and can be found on the Bureau of Special Education homepage. Indicator 13 is a compliance indicator with the expectation of 100% compliance. It's reported as a percent of students age 16 and above who have an IEP that includes appropriate measurable post-secondary goals that are annually updated based upon age-appropriate transition assessments, which include transition services, including course of study, that will reasonably assist the student in meeting those post-secondary goals. There must be evidence that the student has been invited to the PPT, and evidence that, if appropriate, a representative of any participating agency was invited to the PPT with consent of the parent or adult student. During the 2019 to 2020 school year, our statewide results continue to be in substantial compliance with 99.91%. The CSDE has many resources and tools designed to assist districts in meeting this Indicator 13 compliance. They can be found in the secondary transition webpage under the IDEA Part B Indicators section for Indicator 13. The secondary transition planning IEP checklist is available in both Excel and PDF version, and there is a Spanish translated resource for this as well. They are both linked on this slide. There is also a district summary that allows districts to collect data on more than one IEP, and the IEP rubric for secondary transition, scoring secondary transition, measures the quality of secondary transition planning and services provided for students with disabilities by looking at best practices along the continuum. Again, all of these are linked on this slide, can be found on the secondary transition webpage. As a final thought, compliance can come as the result of good practice, but good practice rarely comes as a result of compliance. Indicator 14, post-school outcomes, is reported as a percent of students who are no longer in secondary school and had IEPs in effect at the time that they left school and were either A, enrolled in higher education within 1 year of leaving school, B, enrolled in higher education or competitively employed within 1 year of leaving high school, or C, enrolled in higher education or some other type of post-secondary education or training program, or competitively employed or in some other type of employment within 1 year of leaving school. Data is reported as a percentage of responders. The use of the National Clearinghouse data, or P20WIN, in both FFY 2018 and FFY 2017 was responsible for improvements in our response rate. Responses in FFY 2018 were 38% and FFY 2017 40.7% when compared to FFY 2016, which was only 13.8%. Additionally, as a result of using the P20WIN data, we had the greatest gains in all measurement categories. During the FFY 2018 data collection for students who exited the year prior during the 2017-2018 school year, 90.21% reportedly were enrolled in higher education within 1 year of leaving school. And again, that's the percent of students responding to the survey. That's wonderful news. There are also Indicator 14 resources available on the Connecticut State Department of Education Secondary Transition webpage under the IDEA Part B indicators for Indicator 14. They include a postcard, sample letter, the actual survey that's distributed to students 1 year after exiting school. There's a new companion document and resource list, and a flyer for LEAs to use to assist them in collecting student contact information, all of which have been translated into Spanish this year. And there is also an informational video to assist exiters as they are completing the survey. Results from previous Connecticut post-school outcomes surveys can be found on this page as well. I wanted to share with you a few resources that were either revised or created this year from some of our federal and national partners. The Office of Special Education Programs and the Rehab Services Administration published a letter on the importance of collaboration between special education and vocational rehab related to secondary transition, which was the cover page to the Office of Special Education and Rehab Services revised resource, the Transition Guide to Post-Secondary Education and Employment for Students and Youth with Disabilities. Additionally, the Workforce Innovation Technical Assistance Center, WINTAC, the National Technical Assistance Center on Transition, NTACT, and Transcend published a pre-employment transition services resource, which is a guide for collaboration among state vocational rehab partners and agencies and educational partners. Those are all linked on this slide. There's also links to the Connecticut State Department of Education page, which include COVID-19 resources for families and educators, the Connecticut Learning Hub, and the CSDE events calendar. There's a link to the Bureau of Special Education homepage, as well as the BSE guidance and resources for COVID-19, a link to the Bureau Bulletin. If you don't receive our Bureau Bulletin posts with updates, I would recommend that you use that link to subscribe to our newsletter. And there's a link to the Secondary Transition Planning from School to Adult Life website, which I will be reviewing on the next slide. This page contains many sections, one of which are documents and forms, which are the Connecticut State Department of Education guidance and resources, which I will be reviewing on the next slides. Related resources that are resources related to secondary transition from our federal, national, and state partners. Resources specifically designed for students and families. The indicator resources that I mentioned on previous slides. The laws and regulations, which I mentioned earlier in the presentation. There's also a link to the Connecticut Transition Programs offering transition-only services for students with disabilities. There's an explanation for how to obtain a list of these transition programs through EdSite, Connecticut State Department of Education's interactive data portal, and a link to Easing into Secondary Transition, a comprehensive guide to resources and services in Connecticut. This resource is an interactive resource and contains 3 sections: contacts from our state agency partners, related resources and services that those agencies offer to Connecticut students and families, and are frequently asked questions regarding transition. Those are also linked on this slide, and a link to the PDF of the contacts and related resources list for these agencies can be found in this slide as well. I am excited to share with you that 2 of our secondary transition graphics, providing transition services flowchart and the secondary transition planning process, have been revised with alt text, so they're more accessible to our Connecticut families and students. And they are posted on the Connecticut State Department of Ed Secondary Transition webpage, as well as linked on this slide. They were also translated into Spanish, including the alt text, and are available linked here, as well as the Secondary Transition webpage. The one-pager link that you saw on that screen brings you to a page of a double-sided one-page resource that has all of the secondary transition resources and guidance developed by CSDE. Other secondary transition resources include Building a Bridge, which is also available in Spanish, the Transition Bill of Rights for parents of students receiving special education services, also available in Spanish, the Connecticut Transition Training Manual and Resource Directory, the Transition Assessment Resource Manual, the Connecticut Core Transition Skills, which is also available in Spanish, and Stepping Forward, a self-advocacy guide for middle and high school students, which is a collaboration between CSDE and CPAC, or the Connecticut Parent Advocacy Center. Related to secondary transition professional learning opportunities, I'm excited to announce that, so please save the date, we will be offering on Friday, January 29th of 2021, our 6th annual Secondary Transition Virtual Symposium. More information coming soon, but please save the date. You can find the CSDE and SERC Secondary Transition Calendar at a glance by using the link on this slide. And you can register for those events as well as any other CSDE and SERC events on the SERC events webpage, which is also on this slide. Some of the sessions offered include building a secondary transition assessment toolkit, the why and how, understanding the transition from school to adulthood for students with autism, person-centered planning, including life course planning tools. Sessions are offered in Spanish for that session. And the Connecticut Secondary Transition Community of Practice. Our first meeting is next Thursday, November 12th. So please visit the CT SERC events calendar to register for that event. Some CSDE and SERC secondary transition webinars, which are available now, include the Transition Assessment and Transition Goals 101, both of which are linked on this slide. And coming soon will be the Secondary Transition 5-part webinar series, providing services in a variety of learning models. This 5-part webinar series starts with an introduction to secondary transition, a module on transition assessment, and then a module on post-secondary education and training, a module on employment, and a module on independent living skills. Lastly, the CSDE and the RESC Alliance are also offering the person-centered planning options, including life course planning tools. More information to come soon. So without further ado, I welcome our first state agency representative, Brian Smith from the Department of Developmental Services.
Good afternoon, everybody. As Alicia mentioned, my name is Brian Smith. I'm Assistant Regional Director for the Department of Developmental Services. I'm based in the West Region, right in downtown Waterbury. I first want to thank my fellow panelists for their time this afternoon, but more importantly, all the educators on the call today for all your hard work pulling off education in this COVID pandemic situation we're all faced with. It's not an easy task, so kudos to each and every one of you, regardless of your role. I thank you for that. Just a quick overview. Department of Developmental Services, the mission of the department is to partner with individuals we support and their families to support lifelong planning and to join with others to create and promote meaningful opportunities for individuals to fully participate as valued members of their communities. We are all about trying to embrace where the individual resides, their family, and building that community around them. You can move to the next slide. The vision, all citizens supported by DDS are valued contributors to their communities as family members, friends, neighbors, students, employees, volunteers, members of civic and religious associations, voters, and advocates. The individuals we support play a variety of different roles in their communities, their families, their employers, their religious organizations. Every individual is unique with what they bring to the table as a contributor to their community and to their life. This is a quick little slide on eligibility for those who may not be familiar with our eligibility criteria. The top left-hand corner, that little green check mark, you will see that on our website. It's 2 or 3 clicks away for you, but this is kind of some of the visuals from the website. It is a single point of entry for individuals seeking services both for DDS and the Autism Services Program. So I will explain that quickly. It's always a hot topic. After clicking that box where that green check mark is, you'll see in the middle there's 4 different bullets. That would bring you to that screen. Vast majority of individuals will be applying as someone with intellectual disability, And then there's also those individuals who may be applying with somebody with autism and no intellectual disability. The data is a little old. I think it may be about 6 months old, so I do apologize for that. But we do, regardless of the COVID pandemic, our eligibility unit has been receiving and processing new applications regularly with very slight delays. The staff have been going to and from our Hartford office, to secure the applications and review them, process and respond, and complete that cycle on an ongoing basis. So there's no delays for anybody who might be seeking services through us or through DSS's Autism Services Program. 65% roughly of new referrals are for those young men and women who are 18 years or younger, with some who are around 20 years of age or older. And then, there's a mix of there in between of 18 to 20-year-olds. I highly encourage any caller or anybody on this call that if you know of a student or a loved one or whomever who might be eligible, the sooner we know about them, the better. Whether they want to use our services or not, at least we have a name and a date of birth in our system that we can do some planning for them down the road. There is videos available both in English and Spanish on the application itself. Thank you. So quick eligibility information. I did put the ID eligibility as well as the autism eligibility. Now, I will speak primarily towards ID services because that's who I work with, but we're looking for an IQ of 69 or lower, and with a deficits in adaptive behavior, okay? All manifesting during a developmental period. So that's prior to the age of 18. We often get, well, we have a triennial that might be occurring at 18 or at 19 years of age. We would be looking for the triennial documentation and other supplementary documentation the family may have prior to the age of 18, but as close to the current age as possible. We're not, if we're getting documentation from somebody when they were 8 years of age and they're now 17 and applying, we're going to be looking for something that's more current. We're looking for medical records. You as school professionals are a huge asset in the eligibility process, and I thank you for that because school records are really critical as part of the application, from the most recent IEP, triennial testing and assessments, and just being a support to the individual and the family as they go through this process. We too can assist, but you are going to have the bulk of the information that they may be presenting to our eligibility unit. There's only one group that does not need to meet that IQ requirement, and that is individuals who are diagnosed with Prader-Willi syndrome. They are automatically eligible for DDS services regardless of IQ. Now, the Autism Services Program, which is now under the Department of Social Services, it's been about 3 years, maybe 4, that was moved out from underneath DDS and over to DSS. They are looking for the clinical diagnosis of autism with a full scale IQ of 70 or greater. Okay, so that's where the line in the sand is. So if somebody does have autism, but they have an IQ of 50, they would be eligible for DDS services. But if they have an IQ of 72 and autism, they would be eligible for the Autism Services Program. So they do have a little bit of a different window of opportunity because you don't have to have that manifest prior to the age of 18. I believe it is 22 years of age, the second to last item in that box. So there is a little bit larger of a window for that diagnosis and the supporting documentation. There is a current wait list for those services under that program. Just a little bit about DDS. As I mentioned, I'm in the Individual and Family Support Division. We do have our private sector. We have a vast array of private providers, and then internally staff who work, who help oversee the supports and services offered by our provider network. We do still offer some public services. We are fading away from that, of being a direct provider and moving all those services in underneath the umbrellas of our private providers. And we also do have our self-determination division, which were individuals who chose not to go that private provider route, but want to self-direct, manage their resources and supports that they get from DDS. And those are just a host of other different divisions and support units that we have within our agency. See, there's some of the supports that are available to individuals who are eligible for DDS. Most individuals who are coming in through eligibility are under the age of 18, and they are going to automatically get supported through our helpline. Each region has a helpline. These were designed about 8 years ago, and each helpline roughly is supporting between 22 and 2,500 individuals statewide. So that's 25 times 3. It's quite a few families and individuals that they are all triaging. Most helplines have 2, if not 3 staff who are fielding those emails and phone calls and are supported by a manager. We do have respite services, and we are working on a revised brochure as we speak. But each region operates approximately 4 respite centers. They are currently open. We are working on some logistics. We're anywhere between 50 and 75% capacity due to COVID right now, as far as guests when they are staying with us. My region and the West region, 2 of ours are on regional center campuses. So we have allowed for the public division to hold those for isolation unit purposes in the event there's a COVID outbreak on campus. So the West region is only operating with 2 of our centers right now, but we hope to get those back soon. We have a variety of different family support team members, transition advisors, nurses, behaviorists, psychologists, OT, speech. I believe one of our regions has a PT as well. Alicia is very familiar with and Barry as well. And Ruth with our transition advisors. We have 3 of those in each of the regions. We have a host of case managers statewide who help coordinate those waiver supports. And supports and services, as I mentioned, self-directed. They can also get them through private agencies that we have. And I apologize, I'm flying through this, but I know there's about 5 others who need to talk. So if I'm trying to get through all this. DDS in Connecticut, we are a employment first agency. As of April of 2011, we push employment just like our colleagues in various other state agencies. We want to see as many of our folks who are coming out of schools into adult life to see them successfully secure and maintain employment in their communities. We can skip through this slide, save a little time. That will obviously be available for folks. Again, we are looking for individuals to get those jobs in communities. This here is a little bit of a slide of opportunities under our employment and day services. We have competitive employment, individualized supported employment, group supported employment, individualized day, which is both vocational or non-vocational focused. Pre-voc, some of that is going away with some of the changes under WIOA and a variety of other state and federal laws. Our employment transitional services is a relatively new, a couple of years old, that helps fill that gap for those youth who are maybe not ready for competitive employment. So it helps build those skills to go back onto a referral to our colleagues over at BRS. And then senior supports, and then obviously retirement. The link there will also provide you direct access to that website page. These are some of the other resources that are available, hyperlinks for DDS eligibility. Our family website was designed probably about 5 years ago, and is broken out by milestones in one's life as far as age brackets. So school years to transitional years to adult or senior years. So each of those opportunities you can click on, and there's a variety of different DDS and national resources. Life course, I know Alicia had brought that up. You'll see the little icon on some of my other slides. We are a big proponent of life course. We have actually embedded several tools into our individual plan document that case managers use as a service planning tool for individuals who do get supports from us. Topic A to Z, people are like, what is that? It's one of the easiest things on our website that you can navigate getting information and resources. If you click on that and you want information on autism, click on it, it'll bring you to Autism Services, click, and it bounces you right to the DSS website. We often talk about the level of need tool. If you go to topics A to Z to L, brings you right down to the level of need tool. The manual's right there. You'll see the tool and you know how to complete it just like all of us. One of the critical ones is the qualified provider list. That is updated regularly. So families and individuals, or you all as other state providers and school districts, can look to see who do we contract with? Who is in my community that we might be able to work on a transition plan with a student exiting so we can have a seamless transition for adult services. A variety of different transition resources. We are building on that, and I want to thank State Department of Education on that as well, because they are also posting some of these resources as we get through and get them blessed by our administration. We're posting them in our website as well as the State Department's website. Some other additional resources regarding career planning, employment, self-determination, and self-advocacy as well. Those are all, again, hyperlinks right to our website pages. That might be the last one for Brian. Yep.
Yes, thank you, Brian. So at this time, we'll have Ruth Cavallo from the Bureau of Rehab Services.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here this afternoon, sharing your time with us. I will be discussing the Bureau of Rehab Services in our Level Up program currently. So for those that don't know yet and haven't heard it yet, the Level Up program has been in existence for about 5 years when law for the Workforce Innovations and Opportunities Act put into law that our VR adult program, 15% of their budget had to be spent on pre-employment skills training for our young adults in high school from the ages of 16 to 21, now with the new law, 22, to provide the services. So what you're seeing on the slide is the 5 required services that we currently do. The job exploration, counseling for post-secondary, work-based learning experiences, work readiness training, self-advocacy are the required services. But if you've done any business with us or any of your students have partaken in any of our services, you have seen us provide resume services, interview preparation, Conover career counseling services, job clubs this summer. So we do add other services that fall under those 5 required services. This past summer, although we thought we wouldn't get any students to work because of the pandemic, and we entered into it a little bit late than what we wanted to, we were able to place about 270 students this summer, which was a great number. We did about 138 job clubs throughout the state, and that's what we're hoping to continue to do as we go into the school system, our school year. In order to participate in Level Up services, let me back up a little bit and let you know that if you don't know, we have 9 current counselors, Level Up counselors, that report to me throughout the state. We have the capacity for 11. We will be bringing on 2 additional counselors, Level Up counselors in the areas of Middletown and New Haven. Hopefully within 4 to 6 weeks, we're in the interview process. So stay tuned for those 2 new folks to be named at a future date. So they're spread throughout the state. In order to participate in Level Up services, all we are looking for is for students who have an IEP or 504 plan. And we would just request from school systems to have their last IEP in file for us to sort of know that they are receiving services. So that's all that's required. The rest of the information you would get from your Level Up counselor that covers that school system that you might be part of. Next slide. So due to our, we've been in existence about 5 years for Level Up. BRS has been in existence way longer than that. But in order to be able to spend and reach out to as many students as we can, BRS decided to go into partnership with the State Education Resource Center, also known as SERC. And what we did was we are partnered with SERC, and each Level Up counselor is partnered with what we call a Level Up SERC associate to provide the 5 required services. So if you haven't heard yet, you might have already been introduced to some of the Level Up SERC associates. They're attending meetings. They are eventually will be running some of the services that we would have either run ourselves or have our community rehab providers provide for the students. But the agreement was to coordinate and provide timely provision of services to youth with disabilities in Connecticut. We were building an infrastructure for collaborative and comprehensive pre-ETS, which is pre-employment transition services for program within Connecticut to achieve the 5 required services, which the previous slide and are listed there. We will continue, again, the agreement, the MOA that we went into was, again, to reach out to as many students as possible, to increase caseload size. We did already have pretty big caseloads. With the pandemic, it's probably most important to know that all the students that exited, yes, they have exited, and now we want to replenish that caseload and either make it bigger. So we are reaching out. You might have heard from us already. If you haven't, you will hear from us. If you have students that are waiting, please help us connect, or let us be the burden to connect to parents so that we can continue to provide the services now that we have even extra help to go into the school systems. And that could be virtually, that could be in person. We have few school systems that are letting us go in right now, which is okay, as long as we're all protected. We're able to do that. Next. Okay. So this slide talks about, so Level Up services are for, like I explained, students in high school still who hadn't received a diploma. But what we're working towards is having those students apply for our adult services. You will hear us talking about the transfer to adult services several times throughout their work with us. And what that transfer means is if once they're done with any Level Up services that we've provided, we're done, they're about to exit school. And there's a difference between graduating and exiting. We know that. No, some students will go into an 18 to 21 or 22 program now. So we don't consider that an exit yet. So when the student's ready to exit, about that year before they exit, we're looking at what are the next steps of this student's goals. And that might include our adult services. So what you're seeing is the Bureau of Rehab Services Voc Rehab program is our usual Voc Rehab adult services. Students aren't automatically eligible. It's important to know that this is an eligibility program, and you would have to be eligible for services. For the Bureau of Rehab Services, in order to be eligible, you have to have a disability, diagnosed disability with impairments to work. And the adult VR counselor would be the one who would be gathering all the information necessary to determine if a student is eligible for services. The Level Up counselor leading up to this, if we can gather any of that information, we will ask to have that case be as complete as possible for application to adult services. So know that your Level Up counselor is your go-to person to help with the adult process, to connect them to the adult counselor. What office will they be going to? And the adult part of what we do is for competitive employment. So we're looking at young adults who can do that. We do work with our sister agencies on this, who are also presenting to assist in the ways that we might not be able to assist. So we are all connected. We all talk to each other and try to provide the best services possible, as wraparound as possible once that student exits school, because once they exit school, you guys aren't there, the teachers aren't there, the parents aren't there. to assist in the way that you guys used to. So we try our best to do that wraparound service with the other agencies that they might be eligible for or might qualify for, and we are one of those lead agencies that would help with that. Services, let's go here. So the VR services that we can provide for adult services that are very different than what you heard me say for level up services. They are listed there. Most services, what you should understand is VR adult services is what you're eligible for. I explained eligibility. And once you're eligible for services, the young adult would create an employment plan with their adult counselor. And in that employment plan, they would list the services needed to get to the vocational goal. So each individual, no matter what the disability is, it could be exactly the same, which we know barely ever happens, but on paper, they could both have autism and their employment plans could look totally different because of what their goals are, what their barriers to employment might be. So what you see listed as the services that we're able to provide will vary student to student, young adult to young adult, and note that we don't only help young adults. We are at the BRS Rehab Services Adult Services, we're taking them in from the time that they can work to the time when they're no longer working. So if somebody's 80 years old and says they want to work and are disabled and are able to work competitively, they can apply and become eligible for our services. And again, the services listed there are what we would be looking to provide. The only, as you see, the only disability that we don't take as a primary agency is the persons who are legally blind, and those individuals would be served by the Bureau of Education Services for the Blind, known as BESB, and Barry will be speaking on that, I believe, maybe after me.
Yes, thank you very much, Ruth. Barry, you're up.
Thank you, Ruth. That's a good segue into what we do. The other state, we work closely with all the other state agencies. It's probably better to say what we do differently because we take, we avail ourselves of all the level up services. But before I get started with that, we have just recently refilled our ranks. We have 2 transition counselors. We don't use the term level up counselors. We will either use transition counselors or pre-ETS counselors. And their territories have pretty much divvied up the state kind of on this funky dotted line, circular line, up in north and south. Charlotta Copenhaver was with us as an adult VR counselor. She switched over to our transition initiative. Stacy Lynn Lewis came to us from the private sector in the education field, so she brings a wealth of information and insight to us. I'm the statewide transition coordinator. I support the work that our transition coordinators, counselors do. I'm a coordinator. And, we do a lot of different opportunities for our students. I'll get to the slides. We help students discover work and experience work opportunities in a career field of their interest. Lately, we've been obviously doing a lot of virtual work. We've had a lot of success. And one of the things that we are different from BRS is normally we send our students out of state in the summer or for learning opportunities. We work with a lot of other out-of-state entities in Massachusetts. We've been very successfully partnering with a program out of Vermont, and also programs from Arkansas out to Colorado and all over the place. Almost all of these programs are specific to students with visual disabilities, but there are opportunities where we overlap with all the other agencies and support agencies nationally. Live Independently helps students to gain skills and confidence in both their homes and community activities. We do orientation and mobility, which is similar to travel training, but we'll get into the employer and or the student's home, the young person's home, or adults as well. Prepare for college. We help students experience life on college campus while still in high school. In the past, BESB did a lot more hands-on opportunities where we would partner with colleges and other entities. We were doing more contracting for that now. But we're doing all the level up services. We work with the disability resource coordinators actively, both in state and out of state. I'm going to move on. Get around safely. Orientation and mobility specialists work directly with students to teach travel skills in the community at a job site or on a college campus. That can get very intense. Learn self-advocacy. Help students become comfortable discussing their disability in a manner that projects confidence and proficiency to others. Big focus on disability disclosure. A lot of focus on that is with mentors. A lot of our focus is introducing students and giving students, as well as adults, the opportunity to integrate and interact with mentors who have basically a lot of our success stories and are successfully employed. We'll also have a visual impairment that leads, to that commonality. Very often during these opportunities, students bond with each other and a lot of peer mentoring goes on. We really enjoy doing peer mentoring. All the programs that we work with, whether we're doing them ourselves through our Children's Services program, VR supported, we are directly doing mentor programs. We really enjoy the interaction with students because very often they're kind of alone in a community or in a school. Meet a mentor, I think I just kind of covered that. We just had a very successful mentoring activity on the 21st. I've actually been asked to recreate that in December for adults. Next slide, please. Where did that go? Okay. Assistive technology, not a real strong suit for myself personally, but both our vocational rehabilitation and children's services work collaboratively to provide adaptive technology devices and training to enable students to progress to the next level. That could even include loaning material out, loaning equipment out. Also, going into the actual work environment to help the adult be successful in whatever work environment they find themselves in. And the sky is really the limit there. Recreation, these types of activities enhance mobility skills and provide valuable peer mentoring. You guys, peer mentoring again, one of my favorite activities. These activities help students develop self-determination, skills, and confidence, which transfers to a variety of other settings throughout life. I've been doing this for a while. I mentioned the mentoring program we were able to put together last month. It provided a great opportunity for me to see a young adult who I had worked with, from high school on up through college, just to see the success stories transition through our program and back to the students. It's really, really a heartwarming activity. Pre-vocational helps students explore who they are. Those traits lead to success in certain occupational fields, and BESB can help students learn about these opportunities. We partner heavily with the AJCs and the workforce boards. Yeah. And also, provide, and share resources, national resources online that our counselors are very active, both adults and the transitional counselors working with the ONET and Career Plus and introducing students to those tools. On the jobs, of course, we work with the private providers, the CRPs. Right now, we're doing a lot of virtual work, but we've even integrated some job coaching into some of our virtual work-based learning opportunities. We've had, really successful opportunity this summer where we ran into a roadblock with a student that had a visual and a hearing disability. The program we contracted was able to provide the support through the student's para educator who was at the school that, the integration there was, I'm not describing it well, but it was really, really fun. Again, programs are offered at local, regional, and national locations, including college campuses, at employer sites, and at residential camps. I think that's all for me. My dog's wanting to get out, so I'll be available for any questions. You stop.
Thank you, Barry. So there on that slide is a list of links and resources for the Department of Aging and Disability Services. And that means that Cynthia from the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services is up next. We can hear you now, Cynthia.
Good. So Well, I just want to say it's a wonderful pleasure to be here. It's always nice to see the other sister agencies that we work with so closely, and I feel like each time I listen, I hear something new. So I feel like I'm taking a lot away from this today. So thank you all. So I work with the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, and the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services actually works with all adults over the age of 18. But I'm just mostly here today to talk about those young adults we serve between the ages of like 18 to 25. So there's a division of young adult services which serves that group of young people 18 to 25. Our particular unit really focuses on individuals who you might be working with who have really sort of more complex psychiatric diagnoses, or maybe they've had multiple hospitalizations or intensive outpatient treatment. And we really look at the whole person, and we're also looking for the people who come into our division. DMIS serves about 15,000 young adults all across the state, and our particular program serves about 1,500. So it's this particular group, the Young Adult Services Division, is really a pretty highly specialized program for people that you might be working with more complex psychiatric needs. Now, they may have other comorbid conditions. Usually we have a couple things, sometimes that if they fit better with the autism program, or if they fit better with DDS, with people with developmental disabilities, then they usually take the lead in those, providing those services, and we can partner with them when that's really necessary. A lot of the young adults in our program have experienced pretty severe trauma in their life. Not everybody, but a lot of them have. And really what our goal is to really work with them to help transition them into adulthood. And so that, a lot of our programming is really focused around that. So how we do that is through assessment and consultation. We provide intensive psychiatric services. Everyone who comes into our division as a client, they have individual therapists, they have case management therapists. We connect them with nursing. There's social rehab, skill building. We don't offer or pay for like specific vocational or educational programming, but we will help them get connected to those services. Across the state, we probably have, and it's very, very, very limited. We have probably about 100 different transitional living beds. So we have different programs across the state. Some of them are like 16-hour supported by staff, and some are 24 hours. But again, there's 100 beds all across the state. So again, that's a pretty highly specialized group of individuals that end up in those programs. So you could go to the next slide if you'd like. So, just to break it down a little bit so that it's a little bit more understandable. So like I said, DMIS serves anyone who's over the 18 who's has a mental health condition that requires treatment. And so the first level of intervention is really just our standard outpatient programs. And clients will be seen 1 to 2 times a month, or occasionally, often during that time, they're also getting like medication management and some other supports. It's like our lowest level of care that we offer. And we have a lot of people who fall into that category. Then we have the next level is community support programs. And so that's a little bit more. They're getting a little bit more services, and they will get support a minimum of like 3 times a month. The next level services are ACT services, and clients in that program will be seen every week. And then finally, our specific program is Young Adult Services, and they're seen at least 4 times a week. So as you can see, it's really a much higher level of care. There's many more people involved in the planning. We really like to collaborate with all the providers that are working with them. You know, there are times where they've already graduated from high school, but often young adults coming into our program are still connected to school systems and other resources. So if you're looking at referrals, we have usually DCF will, if they're involved with the client or family, then they'll make a referral. And that usually happens when they're about 16 years old. And while we don't provide services when they're 16, we follow them on a really regular basis. We usually meet with DCF about once a month and just follow how they're doing, so that when they're able to transition to us, not everyone transitions from DCF to us at 18. Sometimes it's later when they finish their educational program, that we're really sort of prepared and we know how we can best help them. Now that would be only for the Young Adult Services program. That wouldn't be for all the GMAS programs. The other way to for a young person to get involved with our division of Young Adult Services is for people who are not involved with DCF. They can contact their local mental health authority, and you can figure out like which place that is if you go to our website, and it has a map and it indicates what program service your area. What happens when someone comes not from DCF, what they will do is they'll come into the office at the local mental health agency, and they will do an assessment, and they'll sort of like triage like what level of care they feel that the person needs. And so then they will assist them in getting that level of care. You know, I would say that the other thing, there's a DCF has sort of is in the process of like changing how they provide some of their services. So it used to be that clients with mental health conditions were seen through a DCF program called Voluntary Services. And that program is in the process of transitioning to Beacon Health. And so we are still in the process of developing a memorandum of agreement with Beacon Health. But instead of some of those referrals coming from DCF, they will now be coming to us through Beacon Health. So if you have like young people that you're working with who have some pretty high level of mental health needs, they can be triaged through. So it actually, the calls go to DCF, and then they're referred to Beacon Health, and then Beacon Health refers them to us. I think that's about it. I think the last page just gives us, you know, if you go to our website, then you'll see the different divisions and offices, and there is a tab for us, and you can also go look and see what services are available in your area. The last thing that it says on there is the DMIS Lit inventory of skills training. That's a tool that we use to help determine the skill set of the individuals that are in there, and there's a link to that, the list assessment and training on the website. So
Thank you, Cynthia.
Yeah, thanks.
So now it will be Karen Quisnell and Jill Lamette from Capital Workforce Partners. And I am looking at the time, I'm sure you are as well. And so we don't want to cut your presentation short, but we have about 15 minutes left, and I have a few questions that have been submitted so far. And so we'll be able to have a short time for some Q&A after you guys. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Alicia. We'll try and make this quick. So yes, my name is Karen Quisnell, and I'm from the Connecticut Department of Labor, and I'm with my longtime colleague and friend Jill Armette from Capital Workforce Partners. And we're just going to give you a little overview of, some of the youth programs that are available through the American Job Centers. So the American Job Centers, or the AJCs, as you've heard them referred to today, are not just centers, but they're a system built on partnerships of organizations, including the Department of Labor and the agencies you've heard from today, that work as a team to provide seamless and effective workforce services to address the career readiness and training needs of people looking for work or seeking a career change, and for employers too looking for skilled workers. So anyone of working age are eligible to receive services, general services. So Jill and I, like I said, are going to touch on a few of the programs for youth in our presentation, but I just want to acknowledge that there are 5 workforce regions in our state, and each region has a workforce development board in our workforce system. They are responsible for planning and coordinating programs to address the unique workforce needs of their regions. So the boards are an important partner with the Department of Labor and the American Job Center system, because they set priorities for employment and training programs and implement those programs in their regions. So what that means, for example, is that although there are core youth programs funded under the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act available in every region, and the regions may all offer, for instance, summer youth paid internship programs, they may also offer other programs funded by WIOA or other grants or other funding streams that will differ from region to region. So I included their logos on this slide for all 5 of the workforce development boards and the region that they oversee. And I encourage you to go to the the board's websites for your particular region. And on the last slide of our presentation for DOL resources, you'll see a link for American Job Center partners, and that's where you can find a link to every workforce development board. So next slide, please. So here are some of the programs that are helpful to know a little bit about. The first is the WIOA Youth Program, which Jill's going to talk about in a little greater detail. All of the Workforce Board websites, while I was talking about them, should have a page or a tab dedicated to youth programs, so it shouldn't be too hard to find. And please note too that each program will have eligibility criteria attached, so that's to be considered. Youth Build. This is a program for youth ages 17 to 24. And in this program, participants would have the opportunity to get their high school diploma or GED while gaining occupational skills, training, and certifications in the construction sector. So this program right now is available in the North Central region and Northwest and the Southwest regions. And then Summer Youth Employment, that provides an opportunity for youth to gain work experiences. And Jill can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is for like in-school youth when available in every region, just to make sure that you keep your local workforce development board's website in your favorites and check often, because open slots fill up extremely fast. So we recommend checking in February or March for those opportunities. And again, that's based on funding availability. Another program that we're a partner in is the Job Corps program. We have it in Hartford and New Haven, and they offer residential and non-residential options. It's important that everyone know about that, because a lot of people don't think that's an option. So this is options for education and training there. The program is for 16 to 24-year-olds. There is an income eligibility component, for example, for people on public assistance, earning poverty level income, homeless, foster child, or qualifies for free or reduced price lunch. And the maximum age limit may be waived if the applicant is a person with a documented disability. So for minors, a parent or guardian must sign a consent, but they offer career training. A student can earn a high school diploma or equivalent, get their driver's license, get a host of tutoring and other supports, and learn a trade and industry recognized credentials. So they both have websites for Hartford and New Haven Job Corps, and I encourage you to check that out as well. So I added the Tech Hires Grant on here, but as I went to look for it on their websites, I think that grant has ended. That was a cool program offering actually 17 to 29-year-olds an opportunity for IT training. They had partnered with IBM and other companies and provided training and work experience. But there are other opportunities like the retail training program that's available in the Northwest region, which provides out-of-school youth 16 to 24 with training and credentialing, designed by the retail industry to help youth acquire skills to land jobs in that industry and advance into promising careers. And then in South Central, they have a program called Project CEO. And that's open, again, to ages 16 to 24, living in South Central, like the greater New Haven area, not currently attending high school or college. And they're offering services free of charge, like practice interviewing, creating a resume, making a personal plan for success. The plan might include like paid work experience, on-the-job training, or other skills training. And then Apprenticeship Connecticut initiative, a lot of emphasis has been placed on apprenticeships really across the nation, which is a terrific earn while you learn model for a lot of people. Our Connecticut legislators recognize the successes of this model and its use in Eastern Connecticut with the manufacturing pipeline and electric boat. So they've invested in this Apprenticeship Connecticut initiative. It's now a Connecticut general statute, and it's to develop workforce pipelines, programs to train qualified entry-level workers for job placement with manufacturers and employers of other industries too, depending on the region. So, that's another opportunity. These programs are run through the workforce board. So again, the industries and the occupational training would vary, but I encourage you to check out the Workforce Development Board website. This isn't necessarily a youth program, but I think it's important to mention because apprenticeships are really a great opportunity for a lot of people. So I'm going to turn this over to Jill, who's going to, she'll talk a little bit more about the WIOA youth program eligibility and in a little bit more detail.
Thanks, Karen.
Next
Good
slide.
afternoon, everyone. So under Title I of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, WIOA, WIOA, we'll say for the sake of the rest of this speech here, of 2014, funds are provided to the states to provide local workforce areas resources that deliver a comprehensive array of youth services that focus on assisting out-of-school youth with one or more barriers to employment, prepare for post-secondary education, employment opportunities, to attain educational or skills training credentials, and to secure employment with career and promotional opportunities. We're not merely looking at a job placement, we're looking at career pathways for these programs. They serve young adults ages 16 or 18, depending on the region, to age 24. So I invite you to really consider looking into these programs, as many of the transition programs enter 21. It's nice that people who may need a couple more years of some more supportive services, that these changes in this WIOA legislation increase the age to 24 for these programs, and I think that's terrific. So again, these services are offered through the workforce development system. Some of the services are in the American Job Centers, others are at the actual providers that are contracted to offer the services. So that will vary throughout the region. There is also an eligibility component similar to what Karen already mentioned. Eligibility could consider somebody in the foster care system if they have a disability. This way they'll be counted as a family of one. They won't look at parental income. If they're parenting, involved in the justice system, if they dropped out of high school, if they're homeless, if they're basic skills deficient. We'll determine this by offering a math and reading assessment to determine the skill level. And if they are an English language learner is another eligibility component. Income information will probably be required to determine eligibility, coupled with disclosure of their current situation. And I say this because it's difficult for some adults to disclose the fact that they're homeless or that they may have a disability. Some might not even realize they have a disability. They don't know how to articulate it. Some might be afraid of stigma or embarrassed, or some might think that they might be excluded from services if they disclose. So, if somebody is helping them to refer them to the program, it's great if they can offer assistance in understanding the importance of disclosure and that it actually makes them eligible. Next slide, please. So with the WIOA youth programs, they will vary by region, but the goal is to provide employment assistance to create skilled workers to take over the jobs that are in demand today, and especially the jobs that are in demand for their regions. We're serving the employers just as equally as we're serving our job seekers. We're trying to create a skilled workforce, okay? And again, we're focusing on career pathways that will lead to good wages, sustainable jobs, promotional opportunities for our young adults. So this will vary through region, these training opportunities. For example, in the North Central region, we're focusing on healthcare, manufacturing, and culinary, whereas in New Haven, they have healthcare, IT, business, and transportation, because they have more job opportunities in that region. So it's important that you visit your workforce development board in your website in your region to see what services, what trainings are being offered. The services might vary per region. However, the general services are all going to include case management support, pre-employment training such as resume preparation, interview practice, job search strategies, soft skill trainings for getting and keeping a job. The training opportunities might be in a college setting, or it might be in-house, earning a recognized industry-specific credential, like maybe like a ServSafe or a customer service certificate, for example. I'm trying to speak fast, sorry guys. Supportive services are also available under the WIOA youth programs. These support services might include, as Karen said, assistance with a driver's license, a bus pass, a gas card, clothing for an interview, work attire. Maybe they need steel-toe boots or scrubs, for example. Programs can assist with Care for Kids application, finding daycare if that's needed. Some offer in-house GED and high school diploma assistance and financial literacy training. So, and then lastly, the most important thing is the youth programs provide paid work experience, job placement assistance, and 1-year retention services after they're placed in a job. So before I go, and the reason for this presentation today, I think, is that I do want to say that it is okay to participate in 2 programs. And actually, sometimes you should, because not every program can provide all the, meet all the needs of many of the individuals. But it is okay to participate in dual programs. And I want to say, especially ADS and BRS, BESB, because we both have a shared goal of focusing on competitive employment opportunities. But we do partner with all the other agencies. But the bottom line is, the key is that we want to leverage our resources rather than duplicate the service. So if a person's enrolled in like the WIOA program, the BRS counselor may offer their expertise to the WIOA provider on understanding workplace accommodations, or how do we modify things so that they can successfully get through our programs. We might be able to leverage resources where we're handling the training, but the BRS could handle the onboarding supports. That's something that we don't have in our youth programs. We don't have job coaching or onboarding supports. So it's important that we work closely together so that we can leverage our services to create the best wraparound supports for our youth, so that they'll have a successful outcome. There's a name for this partnership and collaboration. We call it the Integrated Resource Team, the IRT model, and it's been very effective using this model. So I don't want to take any more time. I know we're short for Q&A. Be happy to answer any questions in the Q&A or in follow-up conversations outside of this presentation. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you, Karen and Jill. And that slide is some of the DOL resources that they mentioned throughout their presentation that are all hyperlinked. And so we want to be respectful of your time and the panelists' time as well. We have received some questions that have come through that question box feature. If you are not available to stay on for our 15 minutes, we're going to extend 15 minutes to offer a short Q&A. If you're not able to extend, please use that question box feature to submit your question, and we will make sure that the agency that you're asking information from gets back to you, we have your email address, so they'll be able to follow up with you after. If you are able to stay on, we will extend for until about 2:45. So we offer you and invite you to stay on with us to participate in a Q&A. So if you have a question, please feel free to submit it or use that raise hand feature and we can unmute. I am going to start with some of the questions that have been submitted so far. So Brian, the question, if a student who is identified as ID and is age 21 returns to public school for services until age 22, how does that impact their DDS funding?
Let me first start by saying I highly encourage the youth to stay until their 22nd birthday. We will be adjusting the release of their projection until their 22nd birthday. So we will be planning for their exit at 22 and be working with the school team, the family, the youth on what that transition is going to look like. It would just be delayed up until they exit at the 22nd birthday. So we are not anticipating any hiccups along the way. We are adjusting though, just like they, meaning you as a school district and students alike, to this change, and working on 300 to 400 different birth date transitions statewide. But we are looking to have that happen. Students stay till 22 through that entitlement. We receive them at that time for those who are eligible for DDS. So there should be no impact on finances.
Thank you. Ruth, a question came in from one of our participants who would like to know how they can get in touch with the counselor assigned to their district or school.
Okay. Let's see. Can you hear me? You want to make sure I'm on mute. You would contact me is probably the best way, and I would connect you to the counselor who would be covering whatever the school district you're referring to.
Great, so we'll make sure that we get you that contact.
Yep.
And
in my email is right on the slide, so yep.
Perfect. Barry, a question for you. What are the ages for BESB services?
Not an easy question to answer. It's case by case, but generally BESB is a birth to end of life agency. It's fairly typical for a student to get involved first with our Children's Services Division, focusing on academics and being able to access the printed word, basically. VR will kick in nominally at 14, but really at 16. We can't expend any VR funding until their 16th birthday. But they may also be open in our Adult Services Division for independent living. Let's just say the student, went through high school, left our children's services at the exit or graduation from high school, worked with VR, got competitive employment. They would close in VR for the time being and still be active in adult services. If they lost that job, or more positively, we're looking for some kind of career advancement, they could be reopened in VR. So I think that kind of covers it globally.
Great, thank you, Barry. Brian, another question came in for DDS. If an application is denied or eligibility is denied, what would the next steps be?
So if an individual is denied eligibility, they would receive a letter from the eligibility unit. It typically would indicate where the application fell short for the eligibility, so that the individual and or their representative or parent, whomever made the application, can look for materials to help support an appeal. They have an appeal process that is within 60 days of the date of that letter they can initiate. I encourage them to consider doing that sooner rather than later, because those appeal hearings are scheduled 2, 3, maybe even 4 months out based on people's schedules. So the sooner you get that, you have a decision, you're not satisfied, you can submit for the appeal. Now, obviously with our eligibility, we are getting both DDS and the Autism Services Program applications. So at the top, there is a selection for ID or autism services. If you're not sure if the youth has autism and possibly ID, that's on the line for IQ, check them both off so we can look at it for both application purposes. If you're not satisfied that you're accepted under one and denied under the other, you cannot be approved for both. But if you think if your loved one is supposed to be eligible under ID and is approved under the autism, you can deny it, or you can appeal that decision just as much as flat out denial from the agency. So hope that helps.
Thank you, Brian. Cynthia, question for Demas. For young adult services, do you work with youth who are in detention and going through detention proceedings? Well, you'll have to unmute Cynthia.
Sorry about that. So yes, we do. So we do get regular referrals for kids, you know, who might be in detention or other services like that. Or we also work with DOC. And yes, the answer is yes. You can also, if you have questions about eligibility too, there's a number that's on the slide that you can also call, and myself or one of my colleagues can also assist you.
Great, because another question came in about what to do if a youth did not qualify or was not found eligible. What would next steps be? Would it be to contact that phone number?
Yeah. So if they were found not eligible, sometimes they're not eligible because we don't have enough information. So sometimes it's a matter of getting more information. So if it goes through the system, like going through DCF or something like that, that sometimes does happen. If you're going through the just through the local mental health authority and you have questions or concerns about that, you can contact our office and we can follow up with that. It has happened in the past.
Great, thank you. For Karen and Jill, for WIOA and other youth work programs, do you also work with youth who are undocumented immigrants?
Hi. So, Jill, I don't know if you want to answer that for WIOA. I can't necessarily answer that for some of the other programs, but I know that, Jill, you said typically you need like to be able to legally work in the United States, have working papers or something along that line, and be of the age, legal age to work.
Social Security or
Social Security.
working papers, yes.
Mm-hmm. For the WIOA program. So for general, this isn't necessarily youth programs, but we have a website, CT Hires, and there are a lot of resources and information and kind of assistance there online, and you can register and get general services. So but the WIOA programs in particular, that's typically what you would need for documentation. Yeah.
Great, thank you. There's some questions about the phone number for Demas, so we'll make sure that you get that. I believe it's on the slide with the session presenters, but we will get that put in the chat for you as well. Question, I think Brian, you've answered this about DDS services kicking in at age 22. So to clarify, it's the birth date, 22nd birthday. And I believe that's so far what we have. So if you have other questions, please feel free to use the raise hand feature or post the question in the chat.
Alicia, this is Brian. I just wanted to throw it out there, and I've done this in other venues and platforms. If a district is on here and wants us to participate in a virtual information session for families or professionals during a PD day, we'd be happy to do so. You can use my contact information. And if it's not my region, then I'll get the appropriate region contact information to you. I'm actually doing one tonight for a district in the West region, and did 2 last week. So we're excited to continue the engagement and coordination with our districts and getting information out to everybody, just using virtual platforms. So.
Thank you, Brian. There is a question about customized employment within the agencies, how we're implementing or utilizing customized employment.
Not everybody just jump at once on that one.
I'll jump in. Go ahead. I know my agency's addressing it. I'm not an expert on it. We've always dealt with it. I know there's a new initiative, some trainings going on, a lot of increased focus is on it. Wishy-washy answer, that's what I got.
I'm not going to piggyback Barry's summary, but it is, I think, a pursuit, an avenue under all our agencies. And all of us are really trying to wrap our brains around maybe a unified definition of what that might look like, let alone the implementation of that. And it's really individualized. It's just that. It's customized to an individual. So you might have a global definition, but you really have to look at the youth, what their skill sets are, and try to find that job element within an existing job that you can maximize. So working with our friends at BESB, Department of Labor, BRS, and beyond in our private sector as well, trying to look at the youth, where their strong points are and where their need areas are, and is there an avenue that they can pursue, tapping into that strength and that interest, and customize something out of an existing job. So it is happening. We would just like to see it happen more, so that gives greater opportunity for youth coming out of school districts.
Great, thank you. And that's all I have submitted for questions so far. So everybody has our contact information that's included in the slides. I just want to say thank you again for joining us this afternoon, and thank you to our panelists for being part of our session this afternoon. We understand that it is a very busy time for us all. We are definitely going through challenges and navigating situations that we have never before in our lifetime, but please remember that you are not alone. The secondary transition process is truly a joint effort, as well as, you know, all of education. So we here are our partners and here to help you. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us. Again, you have our information in the slides, and we look forward to hearing from you and perhaps connecting with you further on. So we thank you. I hope you enjoyed the session and have a wonderful rest of your, rest of your school year. It's just starting, but we wish you well. Be safe, stay positive, and we are here if you need us. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.